So in the way that we conduct ourselves in our lives, what is it that you think informs most people or gives reason for the things that they think and then the things that they do as informed by what they think? Because on the one hand, you could say that, well, we should contemplate the purpose for why we do things, and then rely on some sort of ethical framework to lead us and guide us within that, either through our reason or through something like revelation or a code of ethics that comes down to us through our ancestry. Or maybe I could just be motivated by what I want to do, something that propels me based on my instincts or my passions
Yeah.
or maybe my culture around me. How would you describe sort of the context that we are in these days? Do you think that there's some sort of, is it not a clear distinction? Are the waters very muddy in terms of what motivates most people?
I think definitely there isn't. So in a traditional world, in the ancient world, there was a hierarchy of goods, and
Yeah.
this hierarchy of goods was not at all arbitrary, because it basically led all the way up to the transcendentals of God, like the
Mm.
transcendental nature of God, and the idea of good, truth, beauty. These things are the real reasons why we do things, and we can get distracted. The way to understand is that we have all these secondary desires, or these secondary goods that we engage with,
Yeah.
and these secondary goods, they can trap us, right? They can
Yeah.
confuse us, because they usually are goods. Like eating is a good. We have a purpose to eat. It's one of our purposes, and
Okay.
that purpose is a good purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so we move towards that purpose in love, right? We actually have a desire to find rest in eating, and that's not bad. It's a
Mm-hmm.
good thing. The
Okay.
problem is that the way that the contemporary world is set up, it's almost inverted. It's almost flipped upside down. Where in a traditional world, especially in the traditional Christian world, you would have this hierarchy of goods, which would lead you up towards virtue, which would lead you
Mm.
up towards love, which would lead you up towards freedom
Mm.
from these things on the side. But
Yeah.
now what we have is the opposite: is that all our idiosyncratic desires are seen as identities. That is, like, I have a desire for that, and I identify with that desire so fully that I can't
Right.
break away from it. It becomes
Right.
my becomes an
It,
idol. It really is a form of the contemporary world is really a forms of idolatry,
hmm.
where we confuse all these things that we want, whether it is accumulating goods, whether it is our own
Mm.
kind of sexual desires, whether it is whatever it is, even our jobs, all this stuff. It's upside down from what, let's say, the Christian world had set up, and
Yeah.
in a way it became inevitable that this would happen. You could have, I mean, I'm sure you can find predictions of it, right, in the late Middle Ages,
Certainly.
where
Yeah.
where the idea is, like, if you give up the highest goods, then you're going to end up with, like, porn, furry, like, people buying insane things. Like, all of this was going to happen because the if you keep your eyes down in the world, and you just focus on phenomena, and you just focus on the lower things, it's going to come with that as well. It's a kind of
Yeah. Yeah. So where did the shift take place, or what do you think is the cause of the shift in this thinking, going from the ancient world to the contemporary world?
well, part of it is definitely, there's something in nominalism which is very strong, which is,
Mm.
it's actually, I tend to see the entire progress of the modern world as something like a deincarnation. And so
Okay.
you so you have, for example, Occam. One of the things that Occam does, that Occam wants to put God so high. He wants to make God
Mm.
so transcendent that God becomes arbitrary.
Right.
And so there's no connection out of the desire to preserve the transcendence of God. There's no connection with the will of God and the layout of how the world actually flows. And
Mm.
so it's like God's will is just this arbitrary thing, and God ends up being something like an arbitrary being up there that
Yeah.
created us and now intrudes in our world once in a while, let's say. And so you can see this, like, deincarnation,
Yeah.
to a point where it's funny, because we tend to think of the modern world as just materialism, but it's not. It actually, after the kind of break, you could say, even during the time of the Reformation, you see a kind of spiritualism come about. And so you see it happen with secret societies, Freemasons and Rosicrucians, and you
Mm-hmm.
have these characters like like Jacob Boehme, and all these kind of weird esoteric figures. And
Yeah.
then you have the fideism that you talked about down
Yeah.
here, this kind of popular faith. and scientific rationalism. But
Right.
there's a weird connection between the two. Like Descartes spent his whole life trying to become a Rosicrucian, and people forget that there was this weird break. So you had this kind of spiritual world up here, and then you had this kind of material world down here, and they just weren't connected anymore.
So you're talking about the esoteric order, the Rosicrucian? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were talking about something else. I didn't realize that. I didn't know that about Descartes.
That he wrote these like public letters to the Rosicrucian order in the hopes that he would be initiated in their thing. But it's like it's just an image of what happened, which is this kind of break where
Right.
you have, and you see it today. Like someone says something like, "I'm spiritual but not religious."
Right.
That's a perfect image of that, because they view spirituality as something which is floating above,
Right.
and isn't connected to the communion that I engage with, isn't connected to practices that I engage with others. It's like a purely idiosyncratic.
It's like a dualism between your material life and some other remote thing that
So
you can access when you want to.
You can do whatever you want, and
Yeah.
you have your spirituality that floats above it. And it's a powerful image of the deincarnation, which happened. Whereas if you read the ancient fathers, like especially if you read the Dionysian tradition, and you look even still in Aquinas, you find it, and in Saint Maximus, there's a sense in which God is both fully transcendent but also fully immanent, and that God
Yes.
permeates the world, that hidden behind all phenomena you can find a divine spark, that there's something animating it to make it exist, you could say.